Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Massive welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. I've got 5 episodes for you guys lined up this week, and I think there's 5 guests per week up until the end of March. So we've got so many great tech guests and so many fantastic ideas that I want to share with you. One of which I'm hoping you'll be able to relate to, because I grew up with crazy ideas of how virtual reality and robots were one day going to take over our world. But after years of disappointment, virtual reality is now everywhere. And we even have vacuum robots that can hoover our house on its own. But we don't have family robots in the home yet. A little like that movie Robot and Frank a few years ago. And let's be honest, robots in general have been somewhat disappointing to me over the years and failed to deliver on all those promises in the 80s with films like Short Circuit. But maybe this is all about to change with Ido. Now, for those of you that have not heard of Ido, Ido is an interactive personal home robot that can help with the chores, play with the kids, entertain, and transform your house into a smart home, complete with compatible lighting, air conditioning, doors, and appliances. Now, after an Indiegogo campaign is rapidly approaching $1 million, and a robot that's actually affordable, I simply had to find out more. So buckle up, hold on tight, because I'm going to get the guys that made Ido a reality onto the show today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. I mean, I feel I need to tell you up front, though, that I've been waiting for a next-gen home robot since I first saw Rocky IV in the 80s, but I'm quite excited about this one. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with making Ido the robot an actual reality?
Sure. Thank you for your interest in Ido, first of all, and we're also pretty excited with the reception the robot has got the world over in terms of press, industry, and various events, including US and elsewhere. So, in terms of my background, I dabbled a bit in robotics when I did my undergrad. So that's like around 15 years back, and you need to understand that at that time there was no vision recognition, face recognition wasn't in fancy, and pretty much everything was pretty expensive. So if you have to have a good camera, it's going to cost you like $5,000 to $6,000.
Yeah.
Right. So I dabbled a bit in robotics and got into a career with IBM, did an MBA from Cranfield University in the UK. So I worked for like around 9 years with IBM. Then I started a series of companies after that. Some went well, some went okay, some didn't go well. So, and this is, in fact, one of the companies that I started after that. And this is a field that's very close to my heart. I always wanted to be a part of robotics, and I think it's a very fascinating field. There's a lot of ethical questions, scientific questions, and I think we're going to see a lot of robots in the future, and I think we're going to live with a lot of robots in the future, actually. So I think it's a great opportunity to get involved in the field.
It really is an exciting time to be in at the moment. I must confess, as a man that spent his formative years in the 80s, I've been let down one too many times with tales of robots and virtual reality, but it does feel that things are starting to change now. I mean, the combination of Ido being featured as a game changer in T3 magazine and a crowdfunding campaign that's rapidly approaching $1 million, obviously it meant I had to get you on the show today. So I'll post a video onto the show notes, so for anyone listening, they'll be able to see exactly what Ido can do. But can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Sure. I think I'll address your first concern. I mean, which is a very valid concern. If you see that a lot of robots, the first robot came in the late 80s. It was Asimo, but it's like cost a fortune. It cost like around $300,000. So that's the first robot that came in. And then things have started improving. If you see over the last 30 years, the cost of components have decreased and the technology has become better, faster, and cheaper. And that's key. I mean, if you see right now, any smartphone camera has such powerful tech that it's pretty amazing why nobody is not innovating in the field of robotics right now. We have all the resources, all the price points coming at the right point. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of what is Ido, we call it 3 main pillars of functionality. Ido is a personal assistant, he is an entertainment hub, and plus he is a home and security hub. So these are the 3 pillars we call it. And how we came across these three broad use cases, we did a lot of user surveys before we launched the campaign. We actually ran these surveys with a lot of potential users. We asked them, what do you want in a robot? Why would you buy a robot? How much would you pay for it? What do you want in the functionality? What do you want him taken care of? So essentially, IDO is a result of a lot of user research we did over some period. And even the form factor, the height, even the name IDO, it should be sweet, short, easy to pronounce. It should have something people can relate to. So a lot of thought went into the product. And what you see now is not something that we wanted to sell. It's essentially what the users all over the world want to see in a robot. Yeah. So that's how IDO has come across. And this, I find it very fascinating when I speak to a lot of would-be entrepreneurs, that it's not that what you're trying to sell, you should actually think in reverse and figure out what people want to buy. So I think that's what we did, and that actually was part of the reason our campaign became very successful.
I love that attitude there, and that's something that so many entrepreneurs fail at, by creating something they want to sell rather than what people want to buy. So I think that's fantastic. And I believe IDO is also built on an open platform. I mean, was this something that you wanted to do from the very beginning? And does this make things much easier for future upgrades and adding skills or recipes, etc.?
Right. That's a very good point, actually. I mean, one of the key decisions we made earlier on when we started looking for a platform is to make IDO on an open platform, and that's one of the reasons we selected Android as a front end for IDO. Yeah. So and we have a lot of reasons for it. I mean, one is that it's not only the upgrades; it's more like you get a lot of developer community coming in, and you actually make it easier for them to join your developer community. So rather than asking them to learn a bunch of libraries, a bunch of new mechanisms, you're actually asking them, this is based on Android, and you're tapping into a very big network of Android developers. So they can come in, find it very easy to build products, and then essentially start developing apps for it. And in fact, we released an SDK very earlier on. I think we already released in October, so people are already tinkering around with the SDK and trying to build apps. So that's already ongoing. So that's one of the reasons we went for an open platform. And I think the second, and as you rightly mentioned, adding skills, that's pretty key. Yeah. You need to understand, for any platform that comes to the market, getting it properly skilled, getting new apps, that's very essential. And part of how you do that is engage with the developers, give them a lot of goodies and freebies so that they can come along with you. Because if they don't help you, your product is essentially dead on arrival.
Absolutely. And I love that organic growth that you can get from actually allowing the developing community to build on the platform. So one thing from the user's point of view, how will they actually interact with IDO? Is it voice activated? And would it be similar to, Amazon Echo, where you can add skills and recipes to personalize it as the months go on?
Good question again. In terms of users, we actually have 4 different user interaction modes for IDO. One is voice interaction. Yeah. Then you have the screens where you can actually interact with the screens. You can test the screens, and then you have different modes like autonomous mode. You have an interactive mode, but essentially it is voice activated. And if you speak about Echo, that's something that we're experimenting right now. We're actually experimenting with the Alexa libraries, because that's very sophisticated. It's very good, and they've actually brought down the price point. And we think that Echo is one of the best speech recognition engines in the market. And coming back to your point on adding skills as recipes, we have something called flows. So we use an application called Automate in Android, and essentially we've interfaced our robot's architecture with Automate. So what ends up happening is, like, similar to recipes and flows. You can actually create workflows in Android and use and program IDO for various tasks. Like, you can have a day scheduler, a day planner. So you can actually have it on a weekly schedule, saying that from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 you do this, 7 to 8 you do the patrolling, 8 to 9 you start playing music. So that kind of fits nicely into your schedule. And to be honest, that's one of the feedback we received from the users when we research. they said that they would want this functionality in the robot because that's what they would need it to do, right? So, so that's. I hope that answers your question. It's a bit windy.
Absolutely.
That's good.
As this is a tech show, I feel I must ask you what is under the hood of IDO, so to speak. So for all the geeks out there listening, can you give a rough rundown of the tech spec, with processor, RAM, available ports, connectivity, display info, and of course the all-important battery life? These are the things that a lot of people will be asking straight away.
Yeah, just before I answer that, I'll give you a quick disclaimer. I mean, one of the reasons we've been slow in shipping out IDOs, we've been continuously improving the platform and bringing down the cost and improving the tech specs. So whatever I speak might change in 2 to 3 months when we ship, for the better, hopefully, not for the worse. Right. So what we have right now is we have a quad-core processor that runs Android. It's called an Android SPC. We have another quad-core processor that runs Linux. And these two are connected. So this is like your main brain. You have these two processes running in parallel.
Yeah.
And then it's the Android SPC drives a screen, which is a touch screen, which you can use to interact with the robot. And also the Android SPC drives the projectors. So in addition to the screen, it drives the projectors via HDMI. And the projectors are fairly good. We have a 50 lumens projector and a 150 lumens projector for the body. So fairly good stuff. Yeah, we have like around 2 GB RAM on Android and a gig on Linux. And if you see in terms of how powerful it is, it's fairly easy and cheap to acquire very good processor now, but it's actually quite powerful. It can run image processing, it can run face recognition, it can run a bunch of stuff without loading the system. So, and in terms of connectivity, it does support Bluetooth, it has Wi-Fi, obviously. Very little on the ports because we've decided not to expose too many sockets.
Yeah.
So you might have a couple of USB ports, but nothing else other than that. And the battery life, that's a pretty good question. We're struggling a bit with the battery life, especially with the mobility. But for the tabletop version, the battery life is pretty good. It should last around 6 to 8 hours. Mobility, we're looking at a max of 1.5 to 2 hours, but we're struggling for that.
No, that's fantastic. So if we place IDO in the average family home right now, I would suspect that every member of that family is going to have different uses for it. So can you explain a little bit about what people of the average family would find it perfect for?
Right. I think one of the key things you need to understand when we created the robot is that IDO is a home robot rather than a personal robot. We call it a home robot, and this is essential.
Yeah.
When you have a phone, you call it a personal phone. So personal smartphone is for you, right?
Yeah.
But if you see IDO, it's actually for the home. So that's essentially supposed to be used across the members of your family. So you should understand, for example, if you have if you have a young son, young daughter, if you're a mom, dad, then there's different profiles, right?
Yeah.
And this is a different way people will interact with it. And there are different use cases, like how do you set up your Google account? How do you set up your emails? Do you have reminders coming in, right? You have Skype coming in. And we actually juggled around with this quite a bit because this was challenging, because how do you make sure IDO is good enough to be used by the whole of your family without getting into all the complexities of sharing email information, chats, and all that. So we have some unique decisions that we made, including that IDO has its own Skype ID. And in fact, when you call IDO, we have a companion app. You can actually call IDO, and he's going to track your face. So you can actually see the end user, and he's going to track you around when you walk around speaking on Skype. So we've done a variety of stuff that is exciting, and we actually have a 100-page user manual which actually details all the functionality that is relevant to each member of your family. And I think the user manual was one of your baseline documents. We started developing the product based on the user manual.
Excellent. I mean, I really do genuinely think it looks like an amazing product. I think you've got a real winning idea on your hands here with IDO, and it's receiving a hell of a lot of attention in the press for all the right reasons. But I'm curious about that journey that you've actually been on to get Ido made. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about that roller coaster ride of taking an idea into reality before you even got to the crowdfunding stage? Because I think so often people just see Kickstarter, or in your case an Indiegogo page, and think it all happened overnight. But there's a whole heap of work that happens before you even get to that point, isn't it?
Right. I mean, that's a very good point, and this is what I tell a lot of people. We have a lot of people coming up and telling us, "You're so lucky you raised $1 million," and it's kind of irritating sometimes.
Yeah.
There's no luck in it. It's like we prepared, and to be honest, we prepared for a year before we launched the campaign. A year, and I'm not exaggerating that. We actually did a lot of user research, figured out the right price, build a good email list. We figured out who will be interested to buy that. We actually didn't spend much on PR outreach, but we figured out on getting the product right. And again, this is one thing I felt. See, there is a big difference between an inventor and an entrepreneur. So I think one of the mistakes that people make when you go to crowdfunding is concentrate too much on the prototype and figure out that there's no market for it.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess that's what we did. We actually didn't have a fully functional prototype. We had a tabletop that is functional. We got the architecture right, the basic assumptions right, but we held off from developing till we figured out what the crowd was saying. Right. So I guess that has worked out well. And I think over the last couple of months, we are fully on product development. So we have slowed down on the PR and outreach. And the product development is doing great so far. But as I said, we spent a year. We did a lot of marketing. We had a marketing manual which actually told us what is the messaging we used to reach out to our backer community. What is the segmentation? What's the typical user profile? How much do they spend? What's a good price point? And how do they decide how much they're going to spend? So all of that went in. And in fact, when we launched, we were fairly certain we'll cross $500,000. Yeah. So that's the confidence level we had when we launched.
You're so right in what you say, though, especially about the look thing as well, because I feel your pain there, because I come across that as well myself sometimes. People say, "Oh, you're so lucky doing what you do." But they don't see the 200 podcasts that had no listens and the 500 articles that you do. In the same way that people didn't see Beyonce touring little pubs and clubs with nobody watching. It's all those...
Absolutely.
All that doing where the fun is. But for many people listening that have got their own idea, they might also be unsure on the pros and cons of crowdfunding sites, or even the differences between Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Is that something you can point them in the right direction with, and why you chose Indiegogo?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of... okay, it's a very tough question to answer, but It really depends on what you're trying to do, what's your sector, and a lot of other factors. But to be honest with you, as far as we were concerned, we are actually reached out by Indiegogo. We actually put out a small teaser somewhere. They reached out to us. And they said they want to do a great project with us. And they were fantastic. Even right now, post the campaign, during the campaign, we had fantastic support from Indiegogo. So I guess it was fairly straightforward for us. And there's another reason. I mean, Indiegogo has created all the best robots.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a robot company, you better be on Indiegogo. And we're actually the second most successful robot campaign on Indiegogo. So right now, if people see the best campaigns were like the Jibo is on the top. That's what started the whole thing. And then we have Buddy, then Idol, and we are actually number 2 on the whole list. So it made a lot of sense to go to Indiegogo. But I would say in terms of recommendation or advice, if you're making films, I think Indiegogo is a good bet for creative projects. Robots, Indiegogo is good. So if you're making small toys, hardware products, Kickstarter is great. Yeah. But it's really tough because of all the reasons. You need to figure out what's your market and what's your customer base before you can make a decision.
So like we said there, Ido is actually on Indiegogo right now. And one of the things I absolutely love is anyone interested in picking up one of these, there's a huge discount for all those early supporters. It's certainly one of the biggest I've seen for, thanking people who support you. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about the RRP of Ido and how much it will cost through the campaign? And also how much you set out to raise and where you are now?
Right. I mean, in terms of Indiegogo, we initially set out to raise $75,000, but we blew past that quite some time back.
Yeah.
And we had a fantastic campaign. So In terms of the RRP, we actually expect to retail the product at $1,500.
Yep.
So we're giving a huge discount, and that's one of the ways of telling our early backers that thank you for bringing the product to life. And this is very interesting. Like, we've got a lot of emails and comments from our backers saying that thank you for bringing my childhood dreams to life.
Yeah.
And and some of them have even said, I really don't care if I don't receive a product. I just want to see this thing created. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the main motivation for Indiegogo backers rather than a product. They're actually trying to fund a project or an idea which they love, they can actually connect to, and they feel that that's something that they should support if somebody else is doing it. So I guess that's the key motivation for most of our backers rather than a product. But we kind of have a way of thanking them and saying, by giving them a good discount, very good updates. We give updates every month, pretty much very detailed. We tell them exactly what is happening, and they have also been supportive so far with our project.
So you say the RRP there is $1,500, and how much is it on the campaign again? Sorry.
No, campaign we have a special price of $600.
Yeah.
But with the bundle, with the charging dock and the HD projector, it's around $1,100. So that's the add-on.
That's fantastic. So when are you starting to ship, Ido?
We're going to have the first batch coming out in March.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have the next batch coming out in May and June, pretty much. So we're going to start shipping all the units, in a timely fashion. But I guess one of the things that we've done so far is that making sure. So if you see all the robot campaigns, the crowdfund campaigns are usually late, and all the robots are even later, right? Yeah. So it's not easy to create and ship out a robot. But I guess we're taking a slightly different approach. Rather than waiting for a perfect product, we're going to ship out units as soon as possible to the backers, do over-the-air updates like what Tesla is doing. So that's a great model. So I'm waiting for a perfect product. So I guess we will be one of the first crowd-funded social robots to ship in March.
Wow, it's incredibly exciting. And like you said, I also read that Ido has been shortlisted by the Walt Disney Company, to be showcased to their innovation leadership team, which you have to be incredibly proud of, along with that incredibly positive reception from the tech press too.
Right. I mean, it's been pretty fantastic, all the PR that you've reached. And to be honest with you, we've been kind of overwhelmed with some of the attention because we couldn't handle. So you need to understand, we just broke into the scene 6 months back, and suddenly you have all the invitation. We were invited by BCG, Walt Disney. We were invited. I was one of the keynote speakers at IEEE Robotics Conference in New York. I was one of the speakers at Robo Business in San Jose. So it took a toll on the company in the sense that we had to balance outbound PR with product development and backer management and managing funding. So it's been kind of crazy, but in a very good way. I mean, you don't have time for you to kind of sink in what's happening because the next event hits you in the next week. So you don't have time to enjoy what happened. And Walt Disney was really great. We actually met some of the team at Pixar, some of the team that created R2-D2. So they actually had a robot museum, and Ido was actually part of Walt Disney's Robot Archive, so it felt fantastic. Because I grew up watching Wall-E and R2-D2. So, it was great.
Oh, it really is. So if anyone would like to find out more information or contact you guys, can you point them in the right direction, along with where to find your campaign, of course?
Right. We're actually available at our website. If you go to idorobot.com, you can see the latest updates, what's happening. So you can actually go in and get all the details of the product, or email us at hello@getido.com. So we would respond to you with any of the queries you're having. And again, you need to understand that we're fairly occupied and busy with a lot of stuff. So we do our best, but we promise to come back within 7 days on any queries.
Excellent. Now, like I said at the beginning of the show, I've always been fascinated with robots and the role that they play in our lives. Maybe it's movies such as Lost in Space, Short Circuit, and more recently Robot and Frank that I've always grown up with. But you certainly seem to be taking my years of disappointment and created something quite special in Ido. So a huge thank you for taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you, Neil. And it was a pleasure sharing the story of Ido, and wish you the very best in your series as well. Thank you very much.
Now, I've already played with an Amazon Echo that can tell me the answer to almost any question that pops into my head. And Siri is even attached to my wrist with an Apple Watch, which is a clear indication of just how much this technology is ingrained into nearly every aspect of our lives. Ido is a fantastic concept, and this is something I'm going to be watching very closely. Thankfully, Ido is not as creepy as the robot in Rocky IV that sang Happy Birthday Polly, Happy Birthday Polly, while playing the hits of Go West back in the 80s. And the early bird price of only $600, I must admit, is incredibly tempting. And as always with any tech device we buy these days, it's the software upgrades and adding skills or recipes to the device at a later date that really unlocks its full potential. So my question to everybody listening is, would you happily invite a robot helper into your home? Or are you too independent to hand over control to a gadget? You should know the score by now. Let me know by contacting me on Twitter at Neil C. Hughes. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page, which you can find out just by searching for Tech Blog Rider Podcasts. And hey, if you've had a good time with me today, why not leave a rating or review on iTunes, because it really does help bring more listeners to the show and build our community that we're building. Now, like I said as well at the beginning, we have a large queue of guests waiting to speak to us this week, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time, and I'm going to leave you alone for a few hours and say, until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.